The small town of Blackwood had always been known for its eerie atmosphere. The locals whispered about strange happenings, mysterious disappearances, and sightings of ghosts and other supernatural entities. As a child, I was always fascinated by the stories, but as an adult, I had grown skeptical. That was until I received an invitation to attend the annual Blackwood Halloween Festival. The invitation had been sent to me by a distant relative I barely knew, but something about the tone of the letter had piqued my curiosity. The festival was held in the town square, which was surrounded by old, dilapidated buildings. The atmosphere was eerie, with mist shrouding the area, and the sound of creaking doors and rustling leaves echoing through the empty streets. As I made my way to the town square, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air was thick with an ominous energy, and the people milling about seemed to be shrouded in a heavy cloak of darkness. As I got closer to the town square, I noticed that the buildings around me were even more rundown than I had initially thought. The paint was peeling, the windows were boarded up, and the roofs were caving in. I approached the entrance to the town square and was greeted by an old woman with piercing blue eyes. She wore a tattered cloak and carried a gnarled cane. "Welcome to Blackwood," she said, her voice crackling like dry leaves. "Are you here for the festival?" I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Very well," the woman said. "But be warned, there are things in this town that are better left unseen." With that, she waved her cane and let me pass. The town square was filled with people, all dressed in macabre costumes. There were ghosts, ghouls, and monsters of all kinds. The atmosphere was electric, and the smell of burning wood and pumpkin spice filled the air. As I made my way through the crowd, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. I turned around, but no one was there. I shrugged it off and continued exploring the festival. There were food stalls selling roasted nuts, candy apples, and other treats. There were games and activities, like bobbing for apples and a haunted house. But the more I explored, the more I realized that something was amiss. The people around me seemed to be getting more and more restless, and their costumes were becoming more and more elaborate. I walked past a group of people dressed as skeletons, and one of them reached out and grabbed my arm. I tried to pull away, but their grip was surprisingly strong. "Stay with us," they said, their voices hollow and echoing. "You belong with us." I managed to break free and ran away, my heart racing. As I continued exploring, the town square began to change. The buildings around me became even more rundown, and the sky grew dark, even though it was only midday. The people around me began to transform as well. Their costumes became more sinister, and their faces twisted into grotesque masks. I tried to find my way out of the town square, but the streets kept changing, and every turn led me deeper into the heart of the festival. And then I saw it. At the center of the town square stood a massive, ancient tree. Its branches twisted and turned, and its bark was covered in strange, glowing symbols. The people around me had all gathered at the base of the tree, and they were chanting in a language I didn't understand. Their voices were low and guttural, and they seemed to be calling out to something. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and a massive crack appeared at the base of the tree. A sickly green light spilled out from the crack, and a putrid smell filled the air. The people around me began to cheer, and I realized with horror that they were welcoming whatever was emerging from the crack. I tried to run, but a pair of strong hands grabbed me from behind. I struggled, but the hands were too strong, and I was dragged towards the crack. As I got closer, I saw that something was emerging from the crack. It was a creature unlike anything I had ever seen before. Its body was twisted and gnarled, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. The creature let out a deafening roar, and the people around me fell to their knees in worship. But I refused to submit. I struggled against the hands that held me and managed to break free. I ran towards the edge of the town square, desperate to escape. But then I heard a voice. The person pulled up their mask, revealing their face, and I realized it was my relative, the one who had invited me to the festival. He was standing at the edge of the square, beckoning me towards him. "Come with me," he said. "I can help you escape." I hesitated, unsure if I could trust him. But the creature's roar was getting closer, and I knew I had to make a decision. I ran towards my relative, and he led me towards a hidden alleyway. We ran through the narrow passage, and I could hear the creature's footsteps getting closer and closer. But then we emerged on the other side of the town square, and I saw that the festival was gone. The buildings were restored, and the people had disappeared. My relative turned to me and explained that the festival was a rite of passage for the people of Blackwood. They believed that the festival opened a portal to the other world and that they had to welcome the creature that emerged in order to ensure a good harvest. "But you saved me," I said, still reeling from the experience. "I did," my relative said. "Because I knew you didn't belong here. You're not one of us." My relative led me to a small cafe on the outskirts of town, where we sat down and he explained more about the strange customs of Blackwood. He told me that he had been born and raised in the town, but had left when he was young to explore the world outside. He had returned to Blackwood to attend the festival, but he had not expected the creature to emerge. He had seen me in the crowd and recognized me as a distant relative, and had decided to help me escape. "I didn't want to see you suffer the same fate as the others," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. I thanked him for saving me and asked him how he had managed to escape. "I learned a long time ago that not everything in this world is as it seems," he said cryptically. "There are hidden paths and secret knowledge that can help us navigate the darkness." He went on to explain that he had studied ancient texts and learned the ways of magic and mysticism. He had used this knowledge to create a hidden portal that led out of the town square. "But why do the people of Blackwood do this?" I asked, still trying to make sense of the events. "It's an old tradition," he said. "The people of Blackwood believe that they must make a sacrifice to the creature in order to ensure a bountiful harvest. They believe that the creature brings fertility and abundance to their crops." I shook my head, still struggling to understand. But how could they do this? How could they welcome something so evil? My relative sighed. "Evil is a matter of perspective," he said. "To the people of Blackwood, the creature is a force of nature, like the wind or the rain. They believe that it brings balance to the world and ensures their survival." I nodded, still not fully convinced. "But what about the disappearances? What about the stories of ghosts and other supernatural entities?" My relative looked at me solemnly. "Those stories are true," he said. "Blackwood is a place of power, a nexus of dark energy. There are things that exist in the shadows, things that we cannot fully understand or control." He went on to explain that the town had been built on top of a ley line, a powerful conduit of energy that ran through the earth. This ley line attracted all manner of strange creatures and phenomena, and the people of Blackwood had learned to coexist with them. "But not everyone can handle the darkness," he said. "Some people are drawn to it, like moths to a flame. They become consumed by it and are lost forever." I shivered, realizing that I had come dangerously close to being one of those lost souls. "But why invite me to the festival?" I asked, still confused. My relative looked at me with a small smile. "Because I knew that you were different," he said. "I knew that you had the potential to see beyond the veil, to understand the true nature of the world." "You really mean that?" I asked. "Of course," he said with a smile, and he stood up and gestured for me to follow. "Come with me," he said. "There is much I have to show you." And with that, he led me out of the cafe and into the dark streets of Blackwood. My relative stopped and looked at me with a smirk. "But that doesn't mean I did it out of kindness," he said. "I plan on becoming one of the leaders here, and the only way to do that was to save you without them knowing and bring you back." Before I could react, he pulled out a dagger and plunged it into my chest. I stumbled back in pain, gasping for breath, and watched as my relative transformed into a monstrous creature. "At least I gave you the decency to know why you are being sacrificed," he said, his voice now deep and guttural. "We are related after all, and now I will be rewarded for bringing you back." I collapsed to the ground, feeling the life draining out of me. As I took my last breath, I saw the creature step towards me, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. And then my eyes lids grew heavy, and all the pain started to subside and everything went dark. I could feel my body being dragged through the dirt and people chanting. I was being taken back to the ceremony. Everything was foggy and I barely remember getting tossed back into the ancient tree. As the ceremony progressed, I could feel a strange energy pulsing through my veins. My skin began to itch and crawl, and suddenly, my body convulsed as a burst of dark energy erupted from my chest. My limbs twisted and contorted, fur sprouted all over my body, and my face elongated into a snout filled with razor-sharp teeth. I had become one of the Blackwood creatures. The other villagers recoiled in fear as I leapt towards them, snarling and snapping my jaws. But something in my mind told me to stop. I recognized my relative's scent on the wind, and realized what he had done. My anger turned to fury as I ran towards him, eyes blazing with a yellow-green fire. My relative trembled as I approached him, knowing that he had made a grave mistake. He had thought that he could trick the village into sacrificing me, but he had underestimated the power of the Blackwood ritual. Now, he would pay the ultimate price. I tore into my cousin's flesh with savage glee, ripping him limb from limb. The other villagers watched in horror as I devoured his heart. They knew then that you were no longer one of them, but a creature of the Blackwood. From that day on, I lived in the forest as one of the Blackwood creatures, hunting and killing anyone who dared to venture into my territory. I felt a sense of liberation in my new form, no longer bound by the rules and expectations of human society. I embraced the darkness within, and it had consumed me entirely. As the years went by, I grew more and more powerful, my strength and speed rivaling that of the most fearsome predators in the forest. I was feared and revered by the villagers, who left offerings of meat and other sacrifices at the edge of the woods for me. I lived the rest of my life in the Blackwood, ruling over the creatures and ensuring that the rituals were carried out faithfully. I knew that one day, another villager would be chosen to take my place, and the cycle of sacrifice would begin anew. But for now, I reveled in your freedom, and basked in the dark glory of the Blackwood.